Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please check the number and dial it again.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Hype Call, the podcast where we talk about everything you need to know. So today's topic is the sex PSA. So let's get right into it. First question, guys. What is the sex trap?
I think that's a question for Kobe.
I think that's a question for Caleb.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll explain.
Oh, all right.
So we talked about this in class, and the sex trap is basically, it explains how sex equals intimacy. And we got a display of it in like towers built up, where sex is a part of a relationship with other things in it. And a stable one is where with sex is equal with all of the others. But in an unstable relationship, in a sex trap relationship, sex is greater than all the other things a part of the relationship, and it makes the tower unstable. So that's what a sex trap is.
I agree. The two towers that was in class, I think that was a really good illustration because it just shows exactly what you said, how like the fundamentals that our relationships are built on are not always the best, and it can lead to a unsteady relationship.
Yeah, I think the sex trap is just basically talking about like how like overwhelming sex can be, and like I think a lot of people they misunderstand sex, and they don't understand like it can like the way of sex is like there's a lot like of attachments to it, and it's pretty heavy, and there's a lot of things that come with it. So, yeah.
So what do you guys think about that? Do you like agree that a sex trap relationship isn't one we should be in, or do you guys think do whatever you want?
I think it just makes it unhealthy. Like you're in that relationship for the wrong reasons.
Preach.
Yeah, I think when you're just in it for sex, it's just like when people try to do like friends with benefits. I mean, like there's always an emotional and mental and like a physical like something to it. Like you can't it's just you can't escape it. It's always there. So
you speak from experience?
Yeah. No, of course not.
All right, let's go into the next question. What is the difference between innocence and purity in a sexual context?
Well, when we talk, innocence is like that has to do with like, so like how I understand it, innocence can be taken away from you, and purity can't be taken away from you. You can lose your purity, but only you can lose it, and someone can't ever take it away from you. So, yeah,
I think like innocence is like an absence of like responsibility. So like I like the way Kojo put it in my project, the Purity in Us project. He said that that someone who is pure has a mind that is totally fixed on God. So I think you can be pure, and no matter what you're doing, if you have your eyes set on God in that action, then you're pure. But being innocent from someone is like an absence of responsibility, and I think that's where they differ.
I believe that innocence is like your lack of knowing something. So once you know it, you can't unknow it or like unexperience that thing, you know.
But your purity, when you lose it, like you can earn your purity back.
For the next question, we might need to look something up because it's talking about the word basar. What does the word basar mean?
What does it literally mean?
In the context of our class, we defined basar as being one who is, or two being together in one, not only in flesh but in spirit. So I think the actual like literal definition is being one. What is it? Is
one
it
in
being,
flesh. Like it's
yeah,
like
one
something
in flesh.
Like in flesh or something like that.
One in flesh. So when like you're described, why is the word used to describe sex? Because when it comes to sex, it's two people being put together, one in flesh and in spirit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's just like going deeper into like the concept of sex and saying how there's a spiritual aspect to it. And I think that's what Bizarre is saying. It's not just all physical. People could probably get confused with the word flesh, but yeah.
It's more spiritual than physical.
Caleb, what do you think it means to be one flesh with another person?
I mean, if we're talking literally, we all know what that means. But like,
we lost Jonathan. Oh, he's back.
And the door's back open. Yeah, it's that's talking about your spiritual connection with them. Meaning that when you commit to be married and you use like sex, like it's supposed to be the thing that like binds you two together. That's why it creates problems when it's done like out of marriage or like before marriage, is because it was meant only for marriage, and like when you don't do that, it messes things up.
And the next part of the question is asking, and is the Bible suggesting here that sex is marriage? I think that, and we talked about this in class as well. No. You don't think so? Let's talk about it.
I don't think so.
All right, bet. Let's talk about it.
What do you think?
I think we talked about it in class. Sex equals marriage, just in the sense that sex is one person bringing someone together, making them basar, which is kind of like marriage. And marriage is also, where sex is a big part of marriage as well. And that's why that's why I think sex equals marriage. Why do you differ from that?
Because I think you answered your own question by saying that sex is kind of like marriage. Like they're not like the same thing, but like it definitely plays like a big part. But marriage is more, it has to do with your friendship with that person, your experiences, not just sex.
Well, it's asking is marriage sex? It's saying is sex marriage?
So
and that's why, because you're saying that
makes sense. That makes sense.
Right? Because
I'm like in the middle. Like I think I'm kind of like with Jonathan. Like there's some aspects of like sex and marriage. Like I think the spiritual concept of sex and marriage, I mean, like it's kind of like the same thing. It's like it's two people coming together and like spiritually joining and like just being one. But like physically, obviously, a marriage isn't the same as like the physical aspect of sex. So I mean, obviously, there's like differences. So no, I wouldn't necessarily say sex is marriage.
Well, another thing is you have to think about it how it was like back then when they're talking about it, where like the women or the woman is brought to the man, and then on their wedding night, when they have sex, that seals the marriage.
Wait, I think you guys are taking it too like literal. The question is asking, is sex marriage? And what are we going to define marriage as? Marriage is bringing two together.
Yeah, the union between people.
Right. So is sex not that?
It is, but
sex is also, there's also a physical part of sex where you put the thing in the thing.
There's a physical part of marriage.
Okay, but they're not the same, so.
Well, it's not asking. It's asking, is sex marriage?
I don't think they're the same, but I think they play big parts towards each other, and they're very similar.
All right, we'll just stop there and just agree on that. The next question is asking the nature of sex. Is it primarily physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual? And how do you know?
Depends on the person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, I think it's like it depends on like. I mean, it can be like very spiritual, but it depends on how spiritual the person is.
I think the question should be asking, should sex be primarily physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual?
Is it
like what's the reason behind that should be behind it?
Like obviously, sex is a physical and mental and emotional thing, but I think overall it should be, and it kind of is a spiritual thing.
That should be the strongest aspect of it.
Amen.
Spiritual.
Yeah, I bet, like, again, it's like, how do you know? Because, like, we've never actually had sex. So, I mean, do you guys have any input on, like, any ways of possibly knowing how we would know this?
None of us can really speak from experience, so we're just kind of going off what other people are saying in the Bible.
Yeah, I think
But you can observe other marriages and see that, like, the ones that are strong spiritually are the strongest marriages. And like, if there's a marriage that's only based off they're only attracted to each other physically, it's obviously not going to be as strong as one that is they're connected to each other spiritually.
We should just take from the Bible and see that God meant for it to be mainly a spiritual thing. And also, like what Caleb says, is kind of connecting back to the sex trap. Because if you make sex primarily any of those other things, it begins to get unstable. But when you make it spiritual, then the sex trap disappears and it begins to be a stable relationship. What does cardia have to do with sex? I think in a way, when you're becoming basar with someone, you're giving your heart to them.
I like to think of it instead of, like, you can't say you're giving something away. Like, instead of giving, it's being brought together. If you're giving, then you're losing something. And that automatically, like, makes it sound bad.
Yeah, losing is like a negative connotation to it.
Right.
I also think that another aspect of what your heart has to do with sex is also about being married to someone and having sex in your heart with another person. And someone could be lustful for another person when they're married and be having sex with them in their heart.
It's a good transition to the next question. What do we do about adultery and sexual immorality? How do we take warnings? What warnings do we get from the Bible?
It says, I have the right to do anything. You say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. You say food for the stomach and the stomach for food, and God will destroy them both. The body, however, is not meant for sexual immortality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. By his power, God raised the Lord from the dead, and he will raise us also. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ himself? Shall I then take the members of Christ and unite them with the prostitute? Never. Do you not know what he or who unites himself with a prostitute is one with her in her body? For it is said, the two will become one flesh. But whoever is united with the Lord is one with him in spirit. Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body. Whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies.
I think breaking it down is talking about how we can honor God with our body, because do you not realize that your bodies are actually part of Christ? Should a man take his body, which is a part of Christ, and join it with a prostitute? Never. So I think it's saying here that when we honor God with our body, we need to realize that our bodies are parts of Christ. And when we're abusing it by giving it to someone like a prostitute,
when we're using it with like sexual immorality, not just like a prostitute, like anyone. If you're like using it,
and it can be for other things besides like sexual stuff too. Like, it's just for life in general.
Why is porneia, fornication / idolatry warned against here?
I think it says it in 18 why it's warned against us. It says, run from sexual sin. No other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does. So I think sexual immorality is a sin that like hurts you personally, which is also hurting God because your body is parts of Christ. Yeah. And I think that's why it's warning us against it.
That's why it's such an important part of our culture too, because it affects every aspect of our life, whether it's like being born, or like your relationships with others.
Yeah, it's like most of our life like revolves around like kind of like
Sexual things.
Yeah, sex like everything has sexual tensions to it.
Right.
It's like since like I mean like since I was like little, it's like I'm always thinking about like girls.
Yeah,
So
well,
it's
I
like-
mean, you can see that in like even other animals too. Like all their actions are driven by sexual urges.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's hard to get out of a trap that that you fall in.
I mean, yeah, it is kind of sad. It's like more and more we're seeing our culture and like society not take sex as serious. That's kind of like the kind of atmosphere that we're kind of living in. All right, what are the potential consequences, both positive and negative, or of porneia and bizarre?
So let's first define both. We already defined bizarre. I think we skipped over defining.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what is porneia?
Well, I mean, it said it's fornication and idolatry.
Sexual immorality.
So, what are the potential consequences of sexual immorality and also being brought one in flesh and spirit with someone?
Well, some of the negative. I mean, it's like it could damage your spiritual relationship with God, because again, it's like you're saying, it's like when you participate in sexual immorality, you're dishonoring God because you're hurting your body, which your body is part of God. So I can kind of explain. So, and then you're also hurting yourself. I mean, like mentally and like and emotionally.
I think so. Whenever we have sex, it's a part. No matter if it's in marriage or not. That's why I think sex is marriage, because even if you're not married, when you're having sex, it's like you're being brought together as one. And if you treat sex as porneia, where it's immoral, it's a sexual act of immorality, and you don't want anything to do with them after. It's like you've joined yourself with them in your heart, and it's like they're gonna be dragging along with you forever. It's like they're a piece of you and you're a piece of them, but you guys aren't together anymore. And I think that could bring a negative side to things as well.
Yeah.
I think bizarre, it brings someone together as marriage, and I think if you're doing it in the right context,
spiritually,
it's spiritually beneficial for both parties.
So it says compare and contrast the two ideas. So obviously it's like there's more like positive benefits from bizarre than porneia. Your advice for managing a sexual experience in life?
I think you gotta look bigger than just what you see. It's more than just what you look at the time.
Man,
because you might see someone walking past and be like, "Oh shoot," but you got to think more than that. Otherwise, you might get into trouble. So, and that's the hard part, because your mind is programmed to think that regardless.
I think what's like really really important is like for everyone to like once you get to a certain age to like personally like research like sex and like know what it means to you and know like.
I think it needs to be done early.
Well, yeah, no, I mean early. Like I'm like at a pretty young age. Like I'm saying like maybe like the beginning of your teen years. Like it needs to like you need to start setting boundaries and morals for yourself. Like, and you need to start like get like your own definition of like what sex is to you, and you need to define it for yourself. You need to find what it is.
Well, I think another thing is, instead of trying to see how close you can get to sex, you need to see how close you can get to God.
And I have a great segue into that, because my advice was going to be that sometimes we get blinded by the physical aspects of wanting sex. But if we wait till we can have a spiritual side of sex, which is primarily the most important part of sex, that will be the sex that will most be benefiting from.
Yeah, I mean, into what Caleb says, like don't be thinking about sex. Yeah, be thinking about your relationship with God and like your partner like spiritually. I think like way too much when people get into like relationships, like they think about like what their sex is like. When's the first time we're gonna have sex? But it's like don't just let it come naturally. Like it will, like God will. Like if you guys really are like growing your spiritual relationship with God, like it will come naturally.
I also think that God is a part of every single relationship, no matter if people recognize it or not, or even want it or not. And I think when we're having sex and ignoring God in the equation,
He was left out. He wants to be included.
Yeah. Thank you for dialing into the hype call. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. And yeah, peace from John.
If you liked it, let us know and we'll make another one.
All right, peace, y'all. Hype out.
Hype out.